today we have Samantha from Colossal Order presenting their Green DLC, and Celia Zimmerman from Cybo interviewing her on the little tweaks and challenges when it comes to sustainable communication. And I'm Maria Wagner. I'm the managing director of the Sustainable Games Alliance. And let's kick it off. Thank you so much, guys. I give the mic to you, Samantha.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Um, I will just share this. I am Samantha. I am the community manager at Colossal Order, and I'm really excited to talk about how we approached sustainable communications in City Skylines, and particularly our expansion, Green Cities. So I'll start with a little bit of an introduction. If anyone's not familiar with City Skylines, it's modern take on the classic city builder genre, released back in 2015, where you have to manage the economy, the traffic, the city services of a city to keep your citizens happy and the city functioning. The game focuses very much on player freedom and creativity, so players can build whatever city they want to, be it like utopian or dystopian. Um, and however fantastical they want it to. So the game itself is grounded in reality as much as we can, but as a game, there are of course some mechanics that need to be simplified and gamified to make sure that it's a good and fun experience to play. Um, so since we're focused on sustainability, I just want to touch on how the base game communicates these sort of challenges that the city has to deal with. So players need to provide electricity to their city, and we have a bunch of different options. We have like classic fossil fuel options like coal or oil power plants, and we have some renewable sources like wind, water, and solar power, all in the base game. Um, these come with different ups and downs, and some pollute more than others. Pollution being sort of the main mechanic we have related to sustainability. Um, they also need to provide the citizens with clean water to drink and have some sort of management for sewage, typically starting with just a sewage outlet that pumps out dirty water, polluting whatever area that it sits in. So we have three types of pollution in city skylines: ground, water, and noise pollution. And these all have like a gameplay impact and a visual impact. So on the gameplay side of it, pollution makes citizens sick and reduces the land value, making it less desirable to develop polluted areas. On the visual side, I have a few like examples of how the ground changes color, water gets like muddy and dirty, and vegetation just generally dies or looks sickly. Um, so players have a bunch of options and tools to try and minimize pollution and deal with it best they can. One way to do this is improving the city itself by, as they unlock better services, they can choose the less polluting options. They can also level up their buildings as higher level buildings produce less garbage and use less electricity and water, sort of representing these like improvements in the technology overall. They can also educate their citizens. Higher educated citizens just generally produce less garbage, uh, as a way to like sort of simplify this version of like citizens becoming more aware of their impact in the environment and sort of their role in the whole system. And lastly, players have these policies they can apply to either the city as a whole or areas of the city that can affect, for example, electricity consumption by installing meters in buildings, or encourage recycling, which has uh, the effect that it reduces the garbage accumulation for buildings. These policies typically come at a per building cost, so it's up to players to sort of weigh whether or not the benefits are worth it and whether or not their city can afford these improvements at that moment in time. And of course, there are some consequences if they just let pollution run completely wild or don't pay attention to it or unintentionally try and see how far they can push things. A typical example that can easily happen, especially if you're new to the game, is your sewage output that pours into the river. It spreads with the water current and ends up where your water intake is. You start feeding polluted water to your citizens. They get sick and upset. And the first sort of indication that the player has to this is these little notifications that pop up over the affected buildings. So we have three different ones for each type of pollution that can make citizens sick, and they can then escalate to like the red square sick citizen if the issue continues for a long time. Sick citizens become unhappy. They might leave the city. If they don't get any sort of health treatment, they typically end up dying. Then we have notifications showing that there are citizens who have died and are waiting to get picked up. And that notification can also escalate to like a more severe variation. And lastly, we have Chirper, our like in-game social media for our little citizens that can trigger different little info bits depending on what's happening in the city. So in this case of polluting the water, William Ward is chirping about the dirty water and how citizens shouldn't drink that. Um, these notifications help make the player aware that there's an issue in the city that they need to like deal with. But they of course also need to figure out like where is this dirty water coming from. For that we have these info views, which is what's shown in the second picture, which just like color the area with different things. So this is the pollution info view that, you know, more brown, more dirty water or ground. And we have a separate one for like noise pollution, as that works a little bit differently. So in this case, it's very easy to spot where do I have polluted areas, and then if I remember where I put all my water pumps and water towers, I can figure out if some of them are in pollution, or I can switch to the water info view we have, which highlights these buildings, so that I can figure out where is this coming from. Um, so let's dig into green cities a little bit. Our like sustainable themed expansion. For all of our expansions, the goal is always that they are optional. It's something the players can choose if they are interested in the theme or feel that the features are interesting. But we also know that not all of our players are always interested in every theme we might cover, and that's okay. We always aim for an expansion to provide players with a bunch of new, meaningful choices that hopefully inspire them to try and build cities in different ways or explore some new challenges in the game. We also generally encourage all of our employees to share ideas. We have an internal wiki that anyone can like add their ideas to, from small features to like a full expansion idea. We have a Slack channel that's typically used for the like smaller feature ideas. And for Green Cities, the core of it was that we really wanted to provide players with the tools to build a city that works on only green energy and promotes green values. And this idea came not just from interest from our players, but also from our own values, both as a company and as people. We really wanted to have players think about not just the cities they built, but also hopefully the cities that they live in. Think about some of the challenges that cities experience when it comes to sustainability and pollution and traffic and these kinds of things. And that's what we wanted to explore with Green Cities. So the expansion released in 2017 and provided players with a bunch of more Earth-friendly options. We added a handful of new renewable energy sources, sort of complementing the base game options. So From basically starting out with a tiny city to a giant city, players could always choose a renewable source and make a fully green city and avoid the polluting options. We also added recycling. Previously, garbage was managed either by a landfill where it was just stored or by an incinerator where it was burnt for energy. But recycling offered this like third option where garbage is processed, though at a slower rate, but pulls out raw materials that then enter back into the production chain in the city, meaning they have to like import less or produce less in the city and can sort of continue the renewable cycle there. We added electric and biofuel vehicles. Some of these are service vehicles that the player themselves can pick and choose when they want to use. Some of them are like vehicles that appear automatically in the city, but the player can then encourage more electric vehicles in the city through policies. We added organic shops, which produce some of their goods locally, reducing the amount of truck deliveries they need and the traffic in the city. And we added eco-friendly housing that use less electricity and less water, but pay a reduced tax as a result of using the city services less. Everything we added in Green Cities was based in real world technologies. So our designers and our art team did a bunch of research looking into what sort of technologies that could be implemented. Of course, these had to be adapted for the game. So, for example, the middle screenshot shows a solar updraft tower, and the real world versions of these have these massive greenhouses on the ground level where the sun heats up the air, which then rises through the tower, driving the turbines. Uh, so the game version is massively scaled down so that it could fit into cities and be usable in the game. It was also really important for us that all these new sustainable buildings were easily recognizable. So if you were building a green city and sharing a screenshot of it, or building like an area of the city that's greener or more sustainable focused, it would be easy to see. So we focused on a lot of like earth tones, a lot of wood as a construction material, and incorporated a lot of green spaces where we could to kind of give this a really like uh, environmentally focused vibe to the buildings. So as Paradox Interactive handles marketing, what I'll talk a little bit about is our like communication outside the game. For all of our expansions, we do these development diaries, which are essentially blogs that introduce the new features, talk about our design choices, our inspiration. In the case of Green Cities, we talked about some of the technologies that we were inspired by, how these work in real life, and why we decided to feature them also, and how they function in the game. And all of this is presented to hopefully inspire our players and educate them a little bit, but always as an optional choice, as a new addition that they can choose if they want to, but also enjoy the game if this is not their thing. Um, so for this presentation, I dug back into our development diaries for Green Cities and had a look at like the reception and compared it to the development diaries we had for the expansion before and after Green Cities, which were Mass Transit and Park Life. And I sorted all the comments into positive comments, which covers all of the excitement for new features, excitement for the theme in general that we're covering sustainability, and others covers off-topic comments like talking about what expansion they hope is next, bug reports, or just general discussion that's not focused on the theme of the expansion. And overall, Green City's development diaries had less engagement than the two other expansions around the same time, but had a more or like a higher positive response ratio. So the players that did engage with our development diaries were more focused on the theme of sustainability. Um, Really interesting to see was also that we did not have any negative comments about this theme of sustainability. Nobody was complaining that this was what we'd chosen to work on. Um, the complaints we did have were actually that we didn't dive deep enough into the theme of sustainability, with players hoping that we'd see or that they'd see more focus on even more like options to make car-free cities or greenify older buildings, and sort of that transition that can happen in cities, which we were not able to cover in Green Cities. And then I had a look at how Green Cities has held up as an expansion. It's been quite a few years since it came out, and we've had a bunch of other expansions since then. So the Steam reviews sit at 82% positive currently, which is quite close to the expansions from that time. Mass Transit and Park Life, which were quite popular, sit at 84%, and the base game is sitting at 91%. And similar to the comments on the dev diaries, we can see that there's a bunch of excitement for being able to build greener cities or cleaner cities, but with some disappointment that it just didn't take it far enough for what players wanted. They wanted to really dive into this sort of like the challenges that come with sustainability and environmental consequences when building cities. I'm also super lucky that we have a bunch of data nerds in our community. So our subreddit for City Skylines did a survey back in 22, digging into how players felt about all of the expansions, mainly as a resource for new players to figure out what expansions they might be interested in. But it was very nice for me to look at for this presentation. Green Cities ends up kind of in the middle of the pack for our expansions, being number 6 out of 13 on the most popular list and 8 out of 13 for the most recommended. They also shared a word cloud of the things that players shared as the best or most exciting features about an expansion. And for Green Cities, we can see that new buildings and assets is like the top thing that players were excited about. And this is completely on point for City Skylines. Variation is just always king, so that's not surprising. But it's really nice to see that green, eco-friendly water still features as the features that the players are excited about. So Green Cities it doesn't just sit at the rating it does, or because it offered a bunch of new buildings, but also because it tackled a theme that interests at least a portion of our players. So that was really cool to see. So yeah, that's sort of where I want to start this off, and so let's get into the questions that I know Celia has prepared for me.
Yes, I have a number of questions, and I'm very curious about not only the community sentiment, but maybe going back to where you started, even before the release. You mentioned player interest. How did you include the players, and what kind of places in game or even outside of the game social media channels do players share their feedback and thoughts and ideas, and how do you kind of incorporate those and implement those into developing a game?
Yeah, so the main place our players can share feedback or suggestions is we have an official forum where we have like a dedicated suggestions part, and then players are encouraged to share like ideas or feedback or wishes there. We also get emails. And back then we didn't have the social media presence that we have now, but now our social media channels are also an option. We don't have any like in-game features where they can share this. It is very much out of the game, but um, we generally also like try and have a look where our players are. So like we have a couple of big subreddits that we dig into and an official Discord, all of which have places where players can share their ideas. So we generally make note of anything that is really interesting to us. one of the things that I do after I joined Colossal Order is I keep track of all of these different ideas players have and try and manage sort of a sense of how much does an idea like pop up in the community, how popular is it. So we don't necessarily always choose the most popular ideas, but we always consider what is something that really resonates with our players and what resonates with us and our vision for the game and just sort of what do we want players to engage with and think about.
Thank
Um,
you.
During the development itself, we typically don't have much of an opportunity to like have back and forth with our players. The cycle just doesn't quite allow for that. So it is very much we try and collect as much as we can beforehand, and then we dive into it, and then hope that we have understood what they want well enough.
Yep, that's typically the case, but when it comes to sustainable content, activation, events, engagement seems to be somewhere in the middle, as you already pointed out, and that goes for a lot of games and a lot of activities that we do. So including them as early as possible, I think is key in driving that engagement up, so that they feel that they're part of the content that you're creating rather than crafting something based solely on studio values and then serving it to community where it might not necessarily resonate with them. Um, a question that ties into it, which you've already touched upon, is community sentiment. I'm also super curious about any other ways that you've inspired your community to take action, because taking action is the ultimate goal for any studio who dives into these sustainability themed yeah, whether it's DLC activities or other, but it's extremely hard. There's a case that you shared with us. We had the opportunity to speak earlier ahead of this meeting, and I would love for you to just share a little bit about that one.
Which one are you thinking of?
There was a particular community member or player who decided to jump into a PhD or some sort of
Oh,
education that tied into with
yeah, yeah, we have like a number of players that end up in some kind of city planning role. We had a YouTuber who started out creating content for City Skylines and just building out the kind of cities that he was really passionate about and so he's an American living in California and is really passionate about biking and biking infrastructure. And he started out using the game as a way of showing why this is beneficial and how it can help improve cities, and has ended up moving away from the game and into like working towards improving the biking infrastructure where he lives, which is like super cool that we can help inspire that and like kickstart somebody in something they're so passionate about that also benefits like cities and other people living there.
I think that's extremely impactful and very unique to what you do and your games. A lot of games are not able to inspire their players in the same way, given lots of things, whether it's the platform that they are offered on, or even whether it's a casual or AAA, whatever. There are different levers, stories, characters that can come into play. But given that cities is so grounded in reality, I think that maybe you tell me that there are more ways to inspire your players than maybe other games are able to. Are there some
Yeah,
other standout examples that come to mind, or even challenges? Because this is also a very challenging and tricky thing to do for most.
yeah, I think the challenge is definitely the like where is the line between, you know, pushing too hard for something. Because we want to inspire our players to think about their environment and their cities and their impact in that. But we of course want to like if we get into the preaching area or like you must do these things, there is the risk of alienating them, and we can like our players can be quite stubborn as well on things. We also have like such a variation in the ages of players. Like we have from kids to like retirees as so it's like a wide demographic that we have and talking to them is definitely a challenge because the different generations just respond differently to these kinds of topics as well. Um, so that's always a challenge, but we always try to make sure that like it's okay if we challenge them a little bit, and maybe if somebody is not a huge fan that we're talking about sustainability because they might just want to focus on taking a break from reality, and that's okay, but it's like if they're engaging with us in the places that we communicate, especially outside the game, that's also something that they're choosing to do. So we are gonna have our values there to be presented, and try and nudge players in a direction that we hope is for the betterment of like everyone. But it is definitely challenging, and then this like whole group and initiative has definitely got me thinking about like what sort of things can we do, or like how can we cover this topic in more ways, and how can we get players to engage in a more direct way. Um, but yeah, I don't have any specific examples of how to do that. But hopefully, I have in the future. Maybe. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the exact purpose of this group, is to facilitate and discuss these different challenges and topics when it comes to communicating sustainability themed games. So, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into audiences. Is there any particular group that are more receptive or supportive or engaging when it comes to green cities than others? And maybe that's a group that other games can try and either target or play around with or discover.
That's a good question. I think so. The problem here is I don't have like I think enough sort of data, so I'm just going by my feel here because I don't think we have demographics on like who purchased green cities, for example, or like who interacts most with it. Um, but I'm just definitely finding that the younger generations are more open to uh, some of these topics about like sustainability, but also like equality, and where the older the generations are, the more they can be stuck in. We've always done it this way, and that's fine. But I think City Skylines definitely has a community of players that are interested in those sort of alternatives of uh, like we get complaints about like when somebody builds a city that's very car focused, for example, we can see our community being against that idea that public transport has a place in cities today, and that is they don't they're not a huge fan of, even if we're just talking real recreations of cities, that this sort of like car focused city is not as popular in our community as it definitely was in city building philosophies back in the day.
Super interesting. Players do tend to comment around like the trains and the way they look and feel in Subway Surfers, but no one has ever touched upon the topic of public transport versus cars. So again, I think that's something unique to your game and your community. You talked a little bit about, or we touched upon kind of partnering up and talking to your players. Something came up when we spoke earlier, and that was around the power of partnership and bridging the gap between industries. One thing is games coming together, but there's power in numbers. And I think Skylines offers like again, being grounded in reality, a unique platform or way to engage with others outside of the immediate like game community. I don't know if that's like a trend we will see throughout the coming years as we try and kind of branch out, but do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's a very interesting topic, and I know that we're sort of open to those kind of partnerships. But being a fairly small team, we don't. It's not typically something we actively look for. But I know that whenever we have had like opportunities to work with either cities or companies to sort of both promote the game, but also work as a as like partner with others and just create awareness. I think it was Hemelina was developing a part of the city, and they use City Skylines as a way for like their community to engage with these like changes that were coming to the city and sort of experiment with that and suggest how they wanted the city to change using City Skylines. And I think that is always super fun to do. And I know there have been some like educational collaborations where we did have for a while like an educational version of City Skylines that schools could use so that they could use City Skylines as a way to sort of teach players or teach their students about different aspects of cities or city planning. Um, which is super cool. I mean, we worked on just making a game to have fun. So seeing that being used in educational purposes is really cool, I think.
I think it's amazing. And because blending entertaining or even like escapism with something that's grounded in reality and education is hard for most.
Yeah, and
What is, yeah, go on.
I think City Skylines can be like an easy way to visualize how things look in a city or function in a city. So you can look at like how will public transport in our city affect or traffic, and of course like City Skylines is not a realistic traffic simulator, but it gets close enough to reality that it has the same or similar impacts. Like you can see the changes in the game that you would also expect to see in reality.
And I think that's an interesting point that you're touching upon because when we talk about green communication, we often talk about text and copy and messaging. But when it comes to games, it first and foremost is a visual media. People play it to not only watch but engage with it, but it's visual. And again, working these different messaging in oftentimes most games have to do that. It's an update, it's something temporary, it's DLC, right? What are some of the favorite items that you've incorporated into your games or into Green Cities?
Oh, that's a good question. I am a huge fan of the recycling, because I just think it offers such a nice way of dealing with waste, but also like bringing something back to the city. So it's not just trash that is like stored at the edge of the city, making a polluting mountain or turning it into energy. Because realistically, like there's a lot that we can recycle, and it's before I worked as a community manager, I was an asset creator for City Skylines, creating like mods. And I created recycling assets before they were actually supported in the game. They didn't work like they should, but that had me dive into all of these technologies, like how much energy is saved from recycling glass, for example, instead of producing new glass. So I think it's super cool that we could sort of visualize that in a way in the game where the player can see, okay, well, these resources are now coming back into my production chain, and I don't have to like start over completely, and the impact that can have in just not having to import it or produce it locally and potentially pollute even more.
Based on that, do you have any just your experience as a player and then also all the years you worked at Colossal Order? What are some of your like key tips and tricks that you'd want to pass on to any game working with sustainable themes or trying to work into an upcoming update or other?
Um, that's a good question because I think City Skylines benefit from just being such an easy game to do this in, because you can basically just mirror reality in it, and then you have the similar but maybe simplified problems that real cities deal with, and then the player has to deal with them, and because of the nature of the game, our players just enjoy these challenges. So you can throw like pollution or weather phenomena or like droughts or flooding at them, and they are just gonna be excited by it because it mirrors reality and it gives them something where they can challenge themselves in how they build cities and how they approach it. Um, so I don't know. It's hard to like to give advice for other games because I think we have it easy in some ways, where I think a game like Subway Surfers is so much more challenging to incorporate this sort of communication in because you have to find a way to present it in your game that might not be as straightforward as it can be in a game like City Skylines.
For sure. That's actually why I'm asking. Like, we're constantly trying to find new ways to work it into our green activations in a more organic, no pun intended way.
Mm.
Makes people play and stay because there is a green theme, not because they happen to see it in the App Store, download it, and play. So that's like a constant process, and we've been working with that for around 5 years now, or so. But the value when it comes to sustainability has always been part of the cyber DNA, but it isn't until more recent years that it's something we played around with in game. So my takeaways is that I have yet to play Skylines, but I need to most definitely. I'm sure I'll be able to like find. I'm gonna dig into all the items, all the assets, all the tooltips and stuff, and see what's up. And then I might steal a thing or two, Samantha. I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah,
For Subway
definitely.
Surfers community and our upcoming activations, and there will be more. And speaking of more, I have no more questions for now. So I think we're gonna open up the floor. I see Maria nodding. So if anyone out there has any questions for Samantha, I guess even myself or Maria, now is the chance. And thank you so much, Samantha, by the way. Great presentation. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will just like jump in with actually like two questions before like yeah, others maybe take some time to think about some. Samantha, how was it like for the team to work on that topic? Like, do you have any insights on that? Like, and how was it introduced? Like, was it something what came from the management, or like how did you come up with that?
Uh, I think it's generally like a shared value for a lot of our like team members. It's definitely also part of like Colossal Orders like as a company value, but it we have a lot of people in our team that share those sort of values that want to like want to ensure that we leave the planet in a better state than we start out with, so that there is at least something for future generations to enjoy. So I think it came about really organically. So it is a long time ago that development for green cities happened. So I don't have a lot of like concrete from back then. But it is something that when you guys came to visit us, we were talking about how can we approach this for City Skylines 2, and sort of incorporate it, not necessarily in an expansion like we did for City Skylines, but also just in general content. Like how can we get these sort of challenges in the game and get players thinking about how cities impact the environment. So it's definitely something that just it feels very organic as part of our process, and it's just something that we have in the back of our minds as we're working on content. Like how can we look at that?
Yeah. Okay, cool. And what I also just wanted to emphasize, because like I actually also played a lot of cities, and not just the DLC, but before. I really love that you have just the option. So like it's not I really enjoyed that people can basically try out different things and see like what effects it will have on their citizens. So just like having the option, but not being forced to do something specific. I think that that's like really magical about the game. But yeah, now I leave the floor open to other questions. Anyone? Maybe.
I don't have any question on my side, but huge thanks for this presentation. It was very good to hear how Colossal Order and City Skylines has been doing with these topics, and I actually I was planning to start playing more City Skylines during the Christmas break, but I got so sick that I was too tired to play anything. But this is something that I'm looking forward in this spring, that I need to have time for play City Skylines and to enjoy the trying everything out in the how to build a city that this way or that way and what works and what not, because I love the idea that you can try things out and then, oh, oops, I shouldn't have done that kind of knowledge and so on. So happy to hear this presentation. Thanks, Samantha.
You're very welcome.
We have Arnaud. Wait, I will check. Yeah, we will publish the recording on YouTube as soon as we basically edited it. So I hope like latest next week. So yeah, just to answer Arnold's question. Yeah, and maybe like one more thing. Okay, Ocean, please go.
Yes, great, thanks. Yeah, great presentation. I thought it was super interesting. I just had a comment or question because I thought it was very fascinating, this kind of I don't know, more radical take by your users, that they wanted this other techniques and other things to be able to do in the game, or perhaps not included, that mirror discussions and discourse in urban planning and sustainable thinking. And how you were discussing this and everything. My question is perhaps less why those things are in the game or not, but more how you think about the feasibility of including things that are perhaps not traditional for the genre, the category. Like, yeah, city planners are in this kind of frame of resource management and capitalist economics and how you plan cities in a traditional sense. And you can tweak that somewhat, which you have done in this game quite successfully, it seems. But how do you see including other types of social innovations, technologies, politics that align with discourse sustainability otherwise in a future franchise or DLC?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think like a lot of it always comes down to what sort of resources we have. Like we often have like a lot of ideas for how deep we want to dive into things, and then we have to sort of dial back and look at like what can we actually achieve in the development time we have to work with and with the resources we have, and try and focus on very like the essence of what we want with something. So for example, with Green Cities, the focus was very much on how can we enable players to build a fully green city, and have them think about what it takes to build sustainable cities, and then look at what are the most impactful things for that, because we could dive down into like a ton of like details, so like ride sharing or like uh, sort of like the public transport side of things, and then there's like the production of materials and the impact of that. And it's always like a challenge to figure out how much we can or cannot dive in. So, for example, City Skylines does not have air pollution, which is something that for City Skylines 2 was something we knew we wanted to include, because it has this sort of impact across the city, where you need to make like have some considerations that you wouldn't otherwise have without that. And yeah, it is sort of like an like what is the focus of what we're trying to do, and trying to focus on the most impactful things, and knowing that we can never cover everything in as much detail as we would like, because we just don't have the resources, and at some point it needs to also be accessible for the casual players that maybe just play here and there or aren't so into like urban planning. So yeah, and that's a hard balance to strike. Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I think this is like one of the reasons why we believe that talking about this kind of themes and just like having like a space where people who are working on this kind of questions can exchange their knowledge, maybe contacts and also like numbers is like very, very important. Because there are already so many games out there like which touched upon this topic, and I think we really should like learn from each other and see how we can leverage that, and maybe like of course then also have like a data or maybe contacts into other industries which might be useful. So like not like you, for example, like as Colossal Order, if you need more examples that you don't have to reach out by yourself, but can use other resources or other contacts which are already out there or established within the industry. Yeah.
Can I just add that also working with people like myself in the academy who are interested in doing this and doing research, I think that's could be super interesting and fruitful for everyone involved to see and discover and delve into these kind of balancing acts between what's possible and feasible and what perhaps us as more abstract, removed from the industry, think would be nice, and to see where we could go.
Yeah, I think those kind of perspectives can be super interesting. Sometimes we're really lucky and have players that share, their experience with like the industry that they're working on, and they'll, they might correct us that we presented something like wrong or not accurately enough in the game, and it's super valuable to have that, not only just because it teaches us more about a certain topic, but it might also show us like what are the things that they focus on, like what is key to them. And I think that can be really interesting to find out like what is is our perception of what's important in um or big impact in, like, let's say recycling, and what is actually, if we're talking to people that work in the recycling industry and look at how the different methods work and how they can be improved, like what are they dealing with, the one is interesting to them. I think that can be super inspiring.
I have a comment or a thought, and I have more questions, but I'll try and keep it short. Just going back to yeah, some of the thoughts that came up now, and then the thing about partnerships and bridging. I think a lot of industries could benefit from reaching out to Cities Skylines, because there's so many innovations and tech and tool and architecture and solutions out there that I think a lot of normal people, citizens, the public have yet to discover. And usually it's like more B2B interactions that they have. So it's up to some sort of other company to, dive into that. So how can we like get them to get in touch with you and kind of spread the word about sustainability and sustainable solutions? Because most people know about recycling and solar panels and so on and so forth, but there's some new things out there that most have yet to discover. But I think games offer an amazing platform for people to discover these and learn more about these, and maybe even invest in it or donate towards it or whatever kind of action they can take.
Yeah, I think just maybe like suggesting both to us or to the like companies in question that this could be a cool like collaboration. And I think for City Skylines, it's typically something that would also involve like Paradox. They have like more resources for these sort of corporations. So they are a good partner, like to bring into this as well. but yeah, I'm like I've started like, oh, these meetings have really like started giving me some ideas, like how can we, what can I sort of like dig into, what would be relevant for us to like reach out to or collaborate with, and what is like within our resources to do so.
Because I think it would open up, or trying to open up others' eyes to games, not only as a form of entertainment, but also education, and trying to find out where they could kind of position themselves within our worlds, which is real people, players, but also real people's world, whether it's, real or not. Okay, not. But I think you know where I'm going with this. I think could be really cool, but I think it's going to take a bit of time to get people to understand the full power of gaming outside of people within the industry and the players. But I think if we were able to like unlock that, because there's also a lot of bias around it, a lot of some people still associate games with danger and violence and whatnot, but there's so many beautiful things within games and opportunities as well that everyone could benefit from gamers and beyond.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean,
This was great.
Thanks for joining. And we have a Discord, by the way, so you're welcome to join the conversation in there. And we're also always on the lookout for more people who are looking to join the Alliance or the conversation. We'd love for many, many more of these types of panels, presentation, chats, interviews, whatever you want to name it. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. And thank you, Maria, as well, of course.
Thank you, guys.